So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Stacy Trasancos again, in for Timmerie today. I'm so excited to be back with you for this hour. So we got several great things to talk about that are current issues, but ever ancient, ever new issues as well. I want to talk about that famous story in the Bible about feeding the 5,000. There's been a lot of talk about it since yesterday. It's always something we're thinking about. And there were some comments from Pope Francis yesterday from St. Peter's Square where he was talking about the 5,000. And it had some people in the Catholic cyberspace talking about, what is a miracle anyway? Should we ever try to explain miracles with reason? Should we just reason our way out of the supernatural? Was that even what the Pope was doing? I don't think it was at all. And how do we think about the feeding of the 5,000? Like with a mature faith, because you kind of take that story, or I know I did. I just kind of took that story as another great story among others in the Bible when I was a kid. And I didn't really think about what it meant, but there's so many miracles in the Bible in the time of Jesus, and it seems like we don't have that many miracles today. So I want to talk about the feeding of the 5,000, how we can think about that, give you my thoughts on miracles. I do a lot of talking and studying and thinking about miracles, Eucharistic miracles and whatnot. As a chemist, I have a pretty easy explanation for miracles. I think the only logical explanation is that God would work miracles. Of course, right? He created everything. He can work a miracle. But I'll talk about the feeding of the 5,000. In the second segment, I want to move on to a pro-life story that is playing out in the UK and with the U.S. and with Israel as well, getting involved in the life of this child named Atla Fixler, a 2-year-old girl on life support. In the UK hospital, her parents want to move her to seek treatment outside the country, and Israel and the U.S. both have offered to treat the girl, but it seems like the UK is not letting her go. And it prompts, we've had other stories like this in the past. This is certainly not a new situation with a child that's very sick or on life support. The parents want to get help for the child. The doctors have a different opinion. The politicians get involved. This happened almost 4 years ago with a little boy named Charlie Gard, who did die when they withdrew life support against his parents' wishes. And even I remember going back in 2018, a toddler named Alfie Evans, who also died when life support was removed against the will of his parents. So it's something that we need to be aware of. It's something we need to talk about, and God forbid that any of us find ourselves in such a heartbreaking situation. What is the church's guidance here? What does the church say are our obligations as parents, and how much can we fight? What should we do if we ever end up in a situation like this with a very sick child whom we wish to continue treatment, but the government does not? Or the medical professionals decide it wouldn't be in the child's best interest. Who's in charge of what's in the child's best interest? That's a bioethical issue, and the church does give us some guidance here. The last segment I want to move on to, of course, I know here around the St. Philip Institute, where I am the executive director with Bishop Strickland. I have a wonderful team of people who focus on family life and faith formation. It's Natural Family Planning Week. I know. Some of you, I'm a grandma now. I'm a glamma, as they say. I have 6 grandchildren and kind of onto a new phase of my life. I still feel young, though. I still feel like I chase toddlers all day. I chase teenagers, but and I love them to death. But this talk about natural family planning, it's back. It's Natural Family Planning Week. The USCCB has called the week To Have, to Hold, to Honor, supporting God's gifts of love and life in marriage. And it always we take this week in the summer, I know we plan for it all year long, to talk about what is NFP, why aren't more people using it, what can we do to encourage more people to practice natural family planning? How can we educate them? I know for the people who deal with this all the time, it does get frustrating because it's such a good story, but it's like any time you're practicing virtue, it's hard. It can be hard, and it's not really, well, it's very countercultural. It's against what most people are taught in our culture, unfortunately. So I want to talk about Natural Family Planning Week and share some of my thoughts on it from this different phase of life, because I remember when I was a younger mother and a scientist thinking, oh, that's really cool. The church tells us to collect data on our bodies. Go figure. Like, how cool is that? And to know our bodies and to take control of what we do and to discern in the virtue of prudence what we want to do in our families. And so I'm kind of in a different place, having gone through 5 children. I already had 2, but 5 children after I converted to Catholicism, and then 5 miscarriages, which made me want to not be open to life if I was just going to get death. More than ever, that was one of the hardest times for me. But I want to talk about what we can maybe do to teach more people, encourage more people, and hear your thoughts. So we're going to be talking about miracles, bioethics, and natural family planning. And I would love to hear from you. If you would like to call in, the number is 1-888-914-9149. If you'd like to call in and share as I'm talking about these miracles, if you have, every time I give a talk on miracles, I ask the audience, how many of you have experienced a miracle in your life? How many of you know what I'm talking about? Hands go up, always, hands go up. People know what I'm talking about with miracles. And specifically, I want to talk about something C.S. Lewis said with small miracles. And questions about NFP. If you have anything to say about NFP, the bioethics of taking a child off life support, or fighting it if you don't wish to, and with miracles, I would love to hear from you. So that number again is 1-888-914-9149. Before we dive in, I do have to tell you a quick story. I just got back from Los Angeles with 2 of my teen daughters. I actually got to meet Timmerie out in Los Angeles. We were both speaking at Vox Vitae by Catherine Contreras. She's got an organization out there. And they have this camp every year for teenagers in the area to come spend an entire week at camp learning about pro-life issues. They spend the first day learning about how to pro-life apologetics. They spend the next day learning about what it means to be pro your own life. Like, teenagers need to hear that. It's not just about the babies. It's about also your own life. How are you going to be pro your teenage life and discern what God's will is for your life? And then they talk about the legislation and politics. And then they actually take the kids out to pray at a Planned Parenthood. Excuse me. I need to get a drink of water here. So I got to meet Timmerie and her little baby and say hello to them in person. So it was so neat to actually get to meet her in person after babysitting her show for her every now and then when she first had that baby. Okay, so I see some calls coming in. That's great. So let me just get to this first issue here about the feeding of the 5,000. At the Angelus yesterday at St. Peter's Square, Pope Francis was talking about the feeding of the 5,000, and he was talking about the love that boy showed when he gave up his food. You know, the apostles are like, how about you share your food? And the boy was willing to how many times we do that? Hey, little kid, share your food with all of us. We're hungry. But the boy, that was an act of love that he gave his food. And then the apostles were able to turn that into, or Jesus was able to turn that into, for the apostles to pass out the 5,000, to feed the 5,000, the loaves of bread and the fish. This is a really neat miracle. One of the most fascinating things I remember reading about miracles is in C.S. Lewis's book on miracles. And he said something that I had never thought about, and I want to share that with you. He said there are several miracles in the Bible, like the wedding at Cana when Christ turned the water into wine, and this miracle here of the feeding of the 5,000, that God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit created the universe from the beginning of time and holds everything in existence. And when this small miracle was worked, I mean, it is small. Feeding the 5,000 doesn't seem small, but think about it. God the Creator said to all the species, he commanded all the species from the very beginning to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. And on that day, at the feeding of the thousands, the incarnate God did the same thing, but in a close and small way. Under his human hands, a workman's hands, I'm quoting C.S. Lewis in his book, Miracles, he did what he has always been doing in the seas, the lakes, and the little brooks. It was kind of a miracle of time. Like every season, water is turned into wine. Every season, the fruit grows by water, and the fruit becomes the wine by human hands, the work of human hands. And so, instead of it being over a whole year or several years, the water was turned into the wine instantly. And just like at the feeding of the 5,000, instead of grain, a small grain growing and becoming many, many, many grains, the bread was multiplied instantly. Instead of the fish multiplying in the ocean, the fish were multiplied instantly. And C.S. Lewis calls this, the part I love, he calls this a close and small miracle. And that makes me think of, in our own life, how many times are there, this is the part where people raise their hands when I give these talks, how many times have we experienced the close and the small miracle? I know in my own marriage with my husband, of course, with my husband, what else is marriage? But I don't like to be redundant, sorry. But I know in my own marriage, I love that there are so many little things that happen that coincidence cannot explain. Like sometimes we calculate because he's a mathematician and I'm a chemist. Sometimes we sit down and put pencil to paper and try to, say, what are the chances of that happening? And they're infinitesimally small. And so we always laugh at that. Like, what is the chance that happened? And it's almost like God just taps us on the shoulder and says, hey, Trasancos family, I'm here. I see what you're doing. I'm here. I call them little affirmations. And God just puts things in our way that we see that can't be explained. I mean, we've had flat-out miracles happen where there wasn't any natural explanation for what happened. And we've had other close and small miracles where it's just a miracle of circumstance. Like, how did it come to be that these things happened at this time? Like, it's almost like God knew we needed to see that good thing. And, that's one of the ways our marriage is to become one. We have a million little memories like that nobody else in the world understands but me, him, and God. Because if I tried to explain to you all those things, and you know what I'm talking about, if I tried to explain all the details, it would take a while. It would take longer than we got in this show. But Pope Francis used the same kind of language. He was talking about the logic of smallness in giving, the close and the small miracle. So if you have any examples of miracles like that too, and it won't take too long, I would love to hear from you at the number 1-888-914-9149. Okay, so we have a caller. I'd like to take this caller before we go to break, because we'll move into talking about NFP later. Hi, Robert. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing good. It's good to talk to you.
Thank you. Same here.
So you have a question?
Yeah, so I've been married for 15 years now. Me and my wife, we have 4 kids now. We have a baby. She decided to get on the pill after 15 years because she feels his last pregnancy, well, with this baby, like a lot of stress has brought upon, has come upon her because of the baby and the other 3 kids and taking care of the house and the kids and all that. So she's like, you know what, this natural planning thing, I feel like if I get pregnant one more time, I feel like it's going to fail me, and I feel like my head's going to explode if I get pregnant one more time. So I've always seeked help with, like, our local priests at our parish and everything, but I feel like they kind of, like, misguide her and misdirect her. I don't know whether it's because they're men, but I would like to hear an opinion from a woman like yourself, and maybe something that maybe you could plant a seed in her head for her to understand, and why it's important to be doing natural family planning as opposed to, you know, certified, instead of, you know, being on the pill, you know.
Have you, so this is hard, Robert. This is so hard, and I'm just going to give you advice because you ask it, and I hope that I'm not overstepping anywhere, but I'm giving you advice from my own experience, and I give you the same advice that I would give to my older children who do ask me about these things. So in marriage, you guys have to make decisions together, and have you ask her more. Like, I think sometimes empathy goes a long way. Ask her more about what is this fear, because she seems like she's afraid, and I understand it, because when I was having miscarriages, I was terrified of getting pregnant again. I told my husband, I mean, I wasn't going to get on the pill, but I basically said no more intimacy because I cannot go through another loss. And a lot of it, and it caused problems with us. So I'm not saying we did the right thing. It caused problems with us for many years, and we've been married longer now and worked through it all. But what I really needed as a woman was someone to listen to me, to feel like someone understood, to feel like I wasn't being judged, I wasn't going to be called a horrible person, because there's a real fear of failure when you're a woman. You feel like, failing as a mother is the worst thing a woman can do. Like, if you can't get motherhood right, you might as well just hang it up and stop existing, because motherhood is the most important thing you do. And that fear of failure is real, and it's huge. And I know women a lot of times with 4 babies, that's a lot. Being understood and being told, I know you're scared, but we're going to get through this together. I'm going to love you no matter what. And you have to, Robert, you have to mean it. You have to be ready to love her even if she stays on the pill. You're supposed to guide her to heaven. And you're going to have to pray for her, and you're going to have to kneel before the Lord of the universe, who holds us all in existence, and say, Jesus, please let me see her through your eyes. Please let me understand with supernatural empathy what she's going through, and show me how to lead her to heaven. And then be patient. God will show you what to do. But in the moment, when your kids get older, they're going to do things that you don't think they should do, that you know are bad for them, and you're going to want to duct tape them and put them on the couch and say, you're not going anywhere until I know you're doing things that are good. But it just takes a lot of perseverance like that. And I just want to affirm for you that, God bless you for caring. God bless you for not wanting your wife to be an object, for wanting to have that closeness with your wife. And maybe tell her that. I don't want you to be an object. I want to work through this together. And then, you might have to be willing to go to extremes of abstinence for a while until she figures out how to get her head around this. Because it's scary. It's just very scary. And I'm sure it's scary for you, too, for both of you.
Yeah, I get it. I was told that by another priest as well. It's just the repercussions, and I know a lot of women get a side effect from it in the long run, and they develop cancer or whatever it is. And now it seems like I know a lot of women who have died. I have a lot of friends who their dads are widowers because the moms are dying sooner now than the dads because they were popping this junk in. And I'm just scared that my wife, something's going to happen to her 5-10 years from now that is going to leave me at a point where I'm like, damn, man, that's what I get for letting her stay on the pill, And I just feel like I'm at a dead-end road, and I'm just like, the abstinence part, I could do that. I could, God gave me a gift of self-control now, so I don't really care about that part. I just care about my wife's well-being and her health in the long run. Because I know she's putting in poison little by little in her body, and it's going to come to a point where something's going to, react bad, and I'm going to be in a deeper hole than I am now.
and you'll feel responsible. I mean, you two have to talk about it. You have to talk. You have to tell her that. Just pour out just what you just said to me now. Tell her that. Tell her your fears. These are my fears. So but tell her, I'm going to live with these fears. I just want you to know this is how it makes me feel. I'm worried about you. I love you. I can't imagine anything happening to you. If something bad happens to you, I'm going to feel responsible, like I didn't try hard enough. And I want what's best for you so bad that I want to just control you, but I know I can't. And I just love you no matter what. And I'm here. We're going to get through this. And I promise you, Robert, I can hear it in your voice. You two will get through this. And you'll look back and you're going to be giving people advice on this someday, just like I am now. I promise. Okay. Well,
Thank you for your words of
You are welcome.
Words of encouragement, and
I will say a prayer.
Pray for us, that'd be great.
I will definitely say a prayer, and please pray for me. All right. Well, we need to go to break now. We are going to head to break, and as soon as we come back, we're going to keep talking more about NFP and about this bioethics issue with the child that is now, what's his name? His name is, I got Alfie and the other one on my mind. Here we go. This little boy, Exla, that is on life support in the UK. Okay, so this is Stacy Trasancos, and I will see you right after the break. Thank you very much.
Catholic Order of Foresters is proud to sponsor the Relevant Radio Studio line. For information about employment opportunities and flexible premium life insurance plans, visit relevantradio.com/Forester.
So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
Hello, welcome back to the show. This is Stacy Trasancos in for Timmerie again. And I was just explaining before the break that I met Timmerie recently. I actually got to meet her in person out in Los Angeles last week. We were both at the Vox Vitae Pro-Life Teen Conference teaching teenagers how to stand up in the defense of human life. It was so wonderful. A lot of great talks, a lot of talking about contraception, abortion, breast cancer, the link between those. There was a day on Catholicism the first day, and I talked about Eucharistic and Marian miracles. It was really a blessing to be there, and we're trying to spread that teen conference maybe to another state even. I'll just leave you hanging there. But I got to meet Timmerie, so that was really a blessing. And the next story I want to talk about is this situation. So here's how I like to do things. I like to tell you what's going on. That's how I think. I like to get my head around what's actually going on. And then I'm like, okay, what does the church say about this? So the first thing to understand is what's happening. And I think I bungled the little baby's name before the break. It's Alta Fixler. So it's not a common name to me, so I don't remember it. But what's happening? Let me tell you what's happening. So officials at the U.S. State Department are trying to intervene in the case of this little 2-year-old Alta Fixler on life support. She's in a UK hospital, and her parents want to seek treatment. The parents mostly want to take her back to Israel because that is where they're from, and they are Hasidic Jews, and the father and mother say that their religious beliefs, the majority of God-fearing Jews like to be buried in Israel, so they at least want to take their daughter. They want to take her for care in Israel, which Israel has said they would provide care for her, but they also want her to go back to Israel to be buried in Israel because they have this belief that the first to come back on the day of judgment will be those buried in Israel. Those who are further away will have to go through suffering before coming back to Israel. So on the day of judgment. So they for this reason want to take their daughter to Israel. And so the courts in the UK have looked at this, and they have considered the medical opinions, and they have declared, there's a really long 119-paragraph write-up on the consideration of this case, but the judge declared, for all the reasons being from the medical community and social justice, he made a declaration. Inherent jurisdiction of the High Court that it is not in the best interest of Alta for life-sustaining medical treatment to be continued. It's in her best interest for a palliative care regime to be implemented. So that's what we're looking at here. It's not even about who's going to pay for the care. They did consider the religious concerns of the family and said they don't weigh heavily enough to change the opinion of the court. It's not a good enough reason to change the opinion being that it's not in her best interest for life-sustaining medical treatment anywhere. So that's what they're looking at. The U.S. has also gotten involved, and the neat thing about this is it has bipartisan support. So there are about 10 Republicans who drafted a letter on behalf of the United States to ask. They granted her a non-immigrant visa for the little girl at the U.S. Embassy in London. They issued a non-immigrant visa in the event that she could be discharged from the U.K. hospital, and if her parents choose to transport her to the United States for treatment, they're ready to go. She can come. And then presumably, maybe they could go from the United States back to Israel before she died. And the UK will not, the parents say they're holding our daughter hostage. They won't let her go. Now, this is in The Pillar. This is an article that The Pillar covered today, and by Joe Slama. And I appreciate that he compared this to other events that have happened in the UK that are very similar, very, very similar. And I mentioned it at the beginning of the show. In 2018, there was a toddler, Alfie Evans, and I remember these because I remember paying attention when these happened, and it's heartbreaking because you hear that they pulled life support, you hear that the child is dead, and you just can't imagine being in that situation. Alfie Evans in 2018, and about 4 years ago, Charlie Gard, G-A-R-D, died. Both cases they pulled life support, and the child died, even though the parents didn't wish that to happen. So there were significant medical issues. There are in all three cases, and in all three, Pope Francis has offered public support to the parents, saying that everything should be done, everything possible should be done to treat the child, that there's affection and sadness, and that he's close to the parents, and he's praying that their wish to accompany and treat their child unto the end isn't neglected. And so, if anything else you're listening, please pray for this family, because I personally can't imagine the despair I would fall into if that were happening to one of my children. But I covered this issue, as a mother and as someone concerned about bioethics. I covered this when I wrote the little booklet for Catholic Answers called 20 Answers Bioethics. And the neat thing about writing a little 20,000-word booklet is that you have to be very concise and answer the 20 questions that are in there very concisely. But one of the questions I took up, the next to the last question, was, don't we all have the right to die? And what the church teaches is it's not that we have the right to die. We have the right to die with dignity. We don't have the right to die easy. Okay, that doesn't matter whether you're 104 years old or whether you're 4 years old. You don't have the right to die easy, but we do have the power to die at peace and with dignity. And so if you're older, if you're an adult, you can die with dignity in your own heart. No matter, think of the martyrs. Think of those who suffer greatly with illness. You can still die with dignity no matter how battered your body becomes. You can die in your heart with the dignity. You can receive the sacraments, and even if it's not possible to do that, you can pour out your love and you can pray for the grace to be at peace with God. You can die with dignity for sure, no matter what the case is. It may not be easy. But we're supposed to be on a journey to sainthood, right? And that's what it is about. Our goal is to get to the end, to that very last second, where we fix our souls in goodness for all eternity at the instant of death. But if you're a child, You can't really make those decisions. If you're a little baby and you're 2 years old and your brain is not ready to think about those things, it's the job of the parents to make sure that their baby dies with dignity. And that is harder. It's like we were talking about with Robert in the last segment. If it's just you, you're in control of what you feel and think. But if it's your child, you're not always in control. That's exactly where we are with Alta. And so the parents are saying we just want our baby to die with dignity. And I do want to add to this, then let me give you the number in case anyone wants to call in. I would love to have your thoughts on this. That number is 1-888-914-9149. I'm Stacy Trasancos in for Timmerie. I always ask myself, but what is my obligation as a parent? Now, I was saying before that I've had a lot of miscarriages. There were times when I got pregnant, I knew I was probably going to miscarry again, and I thought, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to throw everything at trying to save this baby, even when I had 5 little kids and teenagers running around who needed my care? Like, am I supposed to drive 5 hours away to the very best hospital and spend everything I can to try every medical possibility to save this child before I miscarry? And I actually thought about doing that, and I thought, but I can't. And I almost remember feeling panicked at one point when I made the intentional decision, I'm not going to do everything. I'm going to accept what comes. And I struggled with that. And I think that's kind of the same thing, not exactly the same thing, if your child is on life support. And I do want to make very clear here, there's a distinction between killing and dying naturally. Okay, killing is active. You do something to bring about death unnaturally. Embryo destruction, abortion, suicide, the mercy killings that are meant to take the life of someone who is innocent. That is killing. It's not the same thing as allowing someone who's very sick to die naturally. So there's nothing wrong with making the decision, if you have a loved one on life support, to let that loved one die naturally. But that decision doesn't need to be made by judges. That decision needs to be made by the family. And this is fundamentally what happens in our society when we don't understand fundamentally the dignity of human life. Okay? Let's try the two out together. And I can speak to this because I used to be materialist. I used to be chemist. Everything's atoms and molecules, and people are just complex collections of atoms and molecules. What difference does it make? If the child is going to die, then under that mindset, you can say, I'm a judge, and I've declared that it's in the best interest of this child, this collection of atoms and molecules, to go ahead and cease operating as an integrated whole, to die. You can say that. But if you understand that the family, okay, so that was the atheistic view. Now let's look at it under the fuller view of truth, the Catholic teaching. If a family is an image of the triune God, if God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, in this infinite circumcision of life and love, so it's all swirling around life and love, the Holy Trinity is 3 as 1, 3 persons, 1 God. It's like that intimacy that we never quite achieve in marriage, but we want to so badly. We want to achieve that so badly. And that is the dignity of the family. And when you understand that, and when you understand that the human person is made in the image and likeness of God, body and rational soul, inherent dignity, then you understand why a judge should never be making this decision. But it gets all wrong from the very beginning. It's kind of like if you're going to go to the store and buy milk, but you take the first step in the wrong direction. You can walk all day. You're never going to get the milk because you started your journey in the wrong way. You started with the first principles wrong. And that happens across the board in our society, all over the globe. They don't understand the inherent dignity of the person. So, it's not, I just want to stress that, it's not wrong to allow a loved one to die naturally. The church does not ask you to go to extraordinary means of resuscitation. A family member is not under an obligation to secure the burdensome prolongation of life. The church doesn't insist that death be avoided at all costs. Why would it? But the church does insist that human beings die with dignity and that our loved ones are dignified. And so that's, how do you wrap all that up when you're standing before the judge in the UK? I don't know, but this is kind of my answer to everything on these bioethical issues. Just don't shut up. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't ever stop talking about it. Just talk. Tell people. Practice the arguments. Know what the church teaches. Be ready to compare them like I did. This is one view of the world. This is the other view of the world. Which worldview do you think we need to have? Which way do you want to be viewed when it's your time to die? Do you just want to be considered this collection of atoms and molecules? Or do you want there to be dignity? And that gives me a lot of comfort as a mother. Dignity with my miscarried children. The dignity there was, this is kind of neat, the dignity there was that because of the Catholic Church's teaching on natural family planning, I knew the minute it was possible, humanly possible, to know that I was pregnant, I knew. Because of what the church taught me about my own body, I knew. And I was able to call my husband and say, honey, there's a new little Trasancos in the world. And I'm going to cry. and from the very first minute it was even possible, we got to celebrate that life. Even knowing we probably weren't going to get to hold that baby and raise that baby and love that baby physically in this life. Wipe the Cheerios off the face and change the diapers and teach them how to ride a bike and watch them go off to college. We weren't going to be able to do all of that. But we still pray for those babies. We still pray for them every day, just like I pray for all the others. So they're part of our family, and we pray for them. And, this life is very short compared to eternity. So we will be together. And that is such a much better message of hope and love and definitely dignity. If you have anything to add to this conversation, I would love to hear from you. I'm Stacy Trasancos in for Timmerie. The number here is 1-888-1888. Do we need the 1? I don't ever put the 1 in my cell phone. But 888-914-9149. We're going to head to break. I'll see you after the break, and then we'll talk about, nice segue here, natural family planning and Natural Family Planning Week.
Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
Hello, welcome back. This is Stacy Trasancos in for Timmerie today, and we're going to talk about NFP in this last short segment of the hour. The number here is 888-914-9149. No, you don't have to dial the 1. I checked. You can, if you have something to add, to call in. But if you're going to do that, you got to hurry because we are running out of time. This week of July 25th to 31st, is Natural Family Planning Awareness Week. The USCCB has called it To Have, to Hold, to Honor, supporting God's gifts of love and life in marriage. Remember I was talking about circumcision, the Holy Trinity of life and love? Well, and the marriage being, family being an echo of that. That's the language they're using. The educational campaign is celebrated if you've got the hashtag NFP Week and social media presence. And there was an article today, so I'm talking about this article at Crux by Jody Marlin at cruxnow.com. Week raises awareness of NFP and how it enriches sacrament of marriage. And they interviewed several people, and one of the people they interviewed is our Director of Family Life here at the St. Philip Institute for the Diocese of Tyler, Deanna Johnston. So I'm so proud of that because she is quickly becoming one of the authorities in the nation on family life and NFP, and she always has good things to say. Check out our webpage, our website, stphilipinstitute.org, if you want to see some of the work that we're doing. And Deanna's doing. We got a lot of videos up talking about natural family planning. So we have this NFP week, and Teresa Notare was interviewed. So she is the Assistant Director of Natural Family Planning in the Secretariat of Laity, Marriage, Family Life, and Youth at the USCCB. And so she's also premier expert on these issues. So that's a long title, isn't it? So Teresa had a very interesting comment in the Crux Now article. She said that that there has been, the development of NFP provider organizations. So these are the organizations that provide education on NFP, is up sharply in recent years. And I can attest to that. There's all kinds of websites and programs popping up to teach people about NFP. But she says, if you look at it from the perspective of user rates in the U.S., the data, it looks like a failure. Why? Because less than 1% of Americans of reproductive age are currently using some type of natural method, which means a whole lot of Catholics are not using natural family planning. Okay, the rate is a little higher within the Catholic Church, but there are layers of knowledge and acceptance that we have here, and she's, asking, that's kind of depressing. It kind of feels futile that there are all these programs, but we're not getting people on board. And so I think that is one of the things we as Catholics have to think about. How do you get someone to make the decision to buy in to natural family planning? How do you get the family? I was wondering, Lucas is here listening in, and I know he has some comments about this. Lucas, what do you think about Natural Family Planning Week?
Well, I think it's really cool. I mean, I'll be honest. So I'm also a convert to the faith, just like you, Stacy. And I remember hearing about natural family planning and just being completely struck because I'd never heard of it before. And I was like, wait, I just thought it was so natural that it was just a thing. Like everybody took birth control. Like that was just a thing that you did. So I think it's great that there's actually an intentional effort to try and bring an awareness to it. And when the more you learn about it, the more you learn how beautiful it really is and how scientific it is. Like it's based according to the way that the human body was created. Like it's not just like this kind of, I don't know, like a harsh kind of just Catholic approach to raising a family. Like it's actually in accordance with natural law. It actually has a lot of cool information about how your body works. Like I was like, this is awesome. Like I wanted to learn more the more I learned about it and the more I went through the process of engagement with my now wife. So, I think it's great. I don't know. Still learning a lot for sure.
It does. How long have you been married, Lucas?
Just a little over a year.
Okay. So, this is what I found later on, because I've been married nearly 20 years now. It was hard at the time. It was hard, no doubt about it. But we have so many memories from those days to talk about. I mean, memories from having all the kids. Well, I mean, I'm going to be honest. We were like, we're bad at NFP. Just kind of like Jen Fulwiler says, we're bad at it. Let's forget it. Let's just have all the babies we can. But it wasn't completely an abandonment of reason. We also we knew when things were going to happen, and it did. Even though it was hard, it wove together a lot of stories that we have for later. And to you moms out there with teenagers, so you might get to this point way off in the future, Lucas. I am not going to tell you which ones because they would kill me. I'm just going to say I have 5 daughters. A number of my daughters knew when they were going to start their very first period because Mama was like, you got to know about this. This is your school's not going to tell you all this stuff. Nobody's going to tell you this. Like, I'm going to tell you the full story. And I told them the full story, and then the girls started telling each other about it. But that's pretty powerful because when you're a teenage girl, the thought of starting your period is horrifying. But several of my daughters, they knew exactly about within a day or two when it was going to happen because I taught them NFP way before. Like, this is how you're going to know.
So they were ready. They were like, we got this. Let's go.
We got this. I know it now. I got it. But it's beautiful in that way because talk about dignity of your body. It's beautiful. What do you think about this, Lucas? So this is kind of... I'm going to be honest. This is a pet peeve of mine. If we're talking about ways to get more people on board, and it may just be me, it may not be anybody else that thinks this but me, I cannot stand the word mucus.
Nope. I am there with you.
I think they need to find a new, because the first time I heard mucus only method, I'm like, what, snot? Like, I didn't, and the USCCB calls it cervical mucus methods. But that is a turnoff. Like,
well, so this is a question that I have for you, maybe. So, and I think maybe a lot of people have when they're first kind of learning about NFP is you're like, okay, there's NFP, but then all of a sudden you learn that there's like 5 or 6 different kinds of NFP. Or different methods rather, and I don't even know all of their names off the top of my head, but I don't know if you have any insights on like this one usually works better, or like if you're in this state of life, or I don't know if you could speak to that at all. But
yeah, so the 3 kinds are, and we have these at stphilipinstitute.org. Deanna did a great job of breaking them all down. There's the cervical mucus methods, the symptothermal methods, and the symptohormonal methods. And I don't think when I was going through it, they had all these different words. But the cervical mucus, basically, you're just looking at your body's signals, the M word that I hate. You're looking at that. Symptothermal, you're looking at the symptoms and you're looking at your temperature. Symptohormonal, this is, I think, probably the most complicated. It involves an electronic fertility monitor. So you use this fertility monitor in conjunction with observations of cervical mucus and basal body temperature. Which one's easiest? I liked the first one the best because I did not want to. The thermometer made me crazy. The device that measured fertility made me crazy. I just wanted to see the data for myself.
Right.
And I wanted to get to know it that way. But, a woman's body is very, it's sort of routine, but it can also be pretty unroutine at times. So it's hard to follow for that reason.
Okay, that's interesting. But that's really helpful perspective, because I just remember being kind of confused by that when I was first learning about it. So, but going back to that point you were making before about how this can actually increase intimacy in a way with your spouse, I can testify to that too. Like, my wife and I have been practicing NFP for just a little bit, and you wouldn't think that it would increase your intimacy just by the sound of it. But actually abstaining, it's like taught me personally that like I need to view my wife like I've begun to like value her more. And then like when we are intimate, then it's like, okay, like this is so much more meaningful than just, I don't know, just satisfying a desire,
Yeah, it teaches you how to be, because I'm in my 50s, my husband's in his 60s. You move on further in life. That youthful intimacy when you're fertile and you're going to have babies, your body changes when you get older, and it is that deeper intimacy that you're going to need for the long haul. And you're laying that foundation now, because you're learning to learn more about each other than just what society says. Like, this is what's heartbreaking to me with contraception. Thank you for those questions, Lucas. And it's so great to talk to someone in their first year of marriage who's willing to go all in. I think it's beautiful. You get to a point where you learn to depend on each other, and you get past you get past that part of. So maybe back up. If you're in the contraceptive mentality and the culture, it says the wife needs to take birth control so we can have kids when we want to. But it's like I said about that first step to the grocery store to get milk, the first principles. If you mess those up, you can walk all day long and you're not going to get where you're trying to go. And where you're trying to go here is to have a long-lasting marriage where the two of you grow closer. I mean, you may be married for 50 years, but you could still be in the same house and not be intimate, and that happens to a lot of people. You never establish those bonds of it. Two never become one. You just become two unhappy people in a house. You don't want to become that. And the contraceptive mentality furthers that. It's just like I was saying with the bioethical issues, and even with the miracles. We lose sight of that spiritual, supernatural reality and the miracle of a child. Instead of the contraceptive mentality where the husband can view the wife as an object, and the wife has this security where she's not going to have that baby unless she wants to. And she will decide when she goes off the pill, and she will decide when she stays on the pill. And she can be protected basically from her husband, from her natural body. That's not what you want to be protected from. You want to be all in your marriage, and you want to give it all in. And honestly, I mean, this is the scary thing too with NFP. You do have to be ready to accept the gift of a child. It is riskier at times. It is riskier. We had 4 babies in 5 years, and it was some of the hardest years of my life. Extreme anxiety sometimes because I didn't even leave the house because I didn't think I could keep them all alive. There's too many babies to keep up with. And so I had a very lonely life for about 6 or 7 years while my husband was working. But we got through it. That's the thing. We learned. It forced us to open up to each other. It forced us to have conversations. It forced us not to ignore our problems, because all families have problems. All marriages have problems. All relationships have problems. Don't pretend like they don't. They do. And being open with natural family planning forced us to have deeper conversations about what we wanted out of life, what our goals are as a couple, what we're trying to build. And it's been beautiful now. I'm a little past that, and I can look back and say, thank the Lord, the Catholic Church taught us these things, even if it was countercultural. I have a marriage that I can be proud of. Thank you for listening in today. Again, I'm Stacy Trasancos in for Timmerie, and she'll be back with you tomorrow. And thank you, Lucas Holt, for producing the show and joining us in the conversation. Best of blessings for your marriage.